I talk a lot about living my life fully alive, you know, and living in the experiences that make my heart come alive. I believe that's why we were created. And I believe, obviously, each person is different, and that looks completely different for them from what is fulfilling, a calling, their skills and talents, and even their own relationship with God, with the divine, with their creator, with the Most High. I think it would be, I call it God. I think it would be God's preference. I think it would be God's preference to let go of anything that gets in the way of that connection. Even if it's religion itself, even if it's the Bible itself. I think God not only has the ability to, but does speak for himself. I actually made a really long video yesterday about this topic specifically. I don't know if I'll post it. I was talking a lot of shit. like I do. But, you know, it feels true, especially in my own personal journey of what some people call deconstruction of faith, because I did used to be Christian. And I talked about how it wasn't so much of an undoing, but a letting go of trying to create a box to fit around God through religion, to be able to grasp mentally the concepts of God. And it was like, what if we let go of the box, the preconceived notions, and the already theorized dogma that is handed to us, and what if we connect directly, actually, what if pray without ceasing was an invitation to be in a constant state of dance and flow with Spirit, with God? And what if it looked different than what we think it looks like? What if it didn't require a temple to worship, but rather our own hearts? What if mind-heart coherence was that? Dr. Joe Dispenza, I'm a big fan of his work, and he studies the mind-body connection, and he talks about the coherence between the mind and the heart. And when I say studies, I mean he has retreats of probably hundreds of people at a time, and he literally will do different types of meditations, transcendental and guided and all these other things, basically to get into a state of I am not this body, to get into this really ethereal state of being. And he puts those, electromagnetic receptors, I think on their heads or their bodies, and him and his team, they measure what happens at the moment of that transcendental experience. And he's what happens is there's this eruption in the heart and or brain or body or whatever. It's this really beautiful scientific perspective of what happens in that moment, right? And he talks about it, and he's these are the moments where miracles are made. This is a man who he was in a car accident where his spine was torn up, and I believe he was a chiropractor. And he was diagnosed as paralyzed, and he would never walk again. And because he had no other choice then but to lay there and be still, he devoted his time to literally mentally, in his thoughts and his intention and his energy, rebuilding his spine. And he was fully healed. And he promised that if he could figure this out, if he could pull this off, if he could be healed, that he would devote the rest of his life to the mind-body connection and whatever that would look like. And he stayed true to his word. But the point that he talks about, where he studies and he has like the scientific brain waves and all this stuff of what happens in the brain activity in that moment of like you're finally aligned, attuned. For me, every time he talks about that, it feels like when my heart and my whole being and spirit is in this like just moment of worship. And I know not everybody can relate to this, but for me, music is my life. You know what I mean? Like it's everything to me. I love it because it's sound, it's music, but it's also words, and it's like the most beautiful parts of life to me. And also for me, that connection with God, that relationship that I call heart space, is my home. So for me to connect my heart space with music in a state of like adoration and overwhelming gratitude takes me to that transcendental place. And for me, that is like that tipping point of I'm not even in my body anymore. Like I'm just having this existential outer body experience of utter bliss, like utter bliss. It's the it's the moments in life where I have been most free and just lifted, elevated to a completely different state of being. And it's so beautiful. In the video that I made yesterday, I started off talking about how much I love music and singing. And then I went into basically like the Bible and Christianity and how, you know, there are controversies around it. And I went into my thoughts about that. But ultimately, I think the point is that if there's something standing between you personally and that connection with your creator, even if it is religion, even if it is the Bible, I think your creator would rather you guilt-free let go of that thing that is being an obstacle between you and connect directly. That's just my opinion. In my opinion, I talked about how is it better to have a book and a set of rules and traditions and rituals that are supposed to guide you to the person? Or is it better to just be with the person and know and love and connect and commune with the person? Or to accurately read about the person and accurately think about the person? How do relationships work? And I think the point is that the world is shifting. People are shifting. The information age is just probably more than we have the capacity to handle, you know? But I think truth speaks for itself, and we can feel it. We can feel it in our bones. We can feel it in our energy, in our intuition, in our hearts. The correlation between the two, between the music and worship and a direct relationship with the divine, with God, that heart space, is that I feel like eventually, when I get to the next project, I want to create music. And one of the types of music genres that I want to create is a new type of worship song. I still listen to worship music, and when I walked away from Christianity, I felt like, for a while, I felt like I couldn't. I felt like I couldn't listen to Christian worship music. I felt like I couldn't worship because I was like, well, I'm not Christian anymore, and those things are Christian, right? And that's not true at all, actually. However, I feel like I'm not the only person who has overwhelming gratitude for God. And whatever that you might call it. I also talked about how I feel like God doesn't care what the fuck we call him. And I say it that way intentionally because I want to demonstrate the fact that God is not as offendable as we have made him out to be. We are offended. We are in our egos in religion and the letter of the law. You know, I think there's a reason why Jesus spoke in parables. I think there's a reason why Jesus was like, he who has ears, let him hear. And I think that hearing, that understanding is bestowed onto people who will steward it well, who need it, who are ready to hear it. I was talking about how, like, Jesus is kind of, he cut through the bullshit of people, you know what I mean? And he was just like, I could just imagine him, like, I don't know, like rolling his eyes at people when they just try to like fuck with him. There was this one story where the Pharisees who were like the gatekeepers of religion and the official relationship, not even relationship, the official whatever of God. They were just like super strict and followed the law to the letter, completely missing the whole point of what the heart of the message is. Like, what is the point of this ritual that you're doing? And obviously super judgy, super whatever, and thought that they were the shit, honestly, and hated Jesus to his death. But there was this one time when they came up to Jesus trying to trap him by asking him, hey, should we pay taxes? And Jesus, more accurately, Yeshua, was like, oh my God, it's just hilarious, actually. But they were trying to see how he would answer it, and if he would be loyal to God or if he would be loyal to the government. You know what I mean? And he's like, give me a coin, give me a denarii. And he holds it up and he's like, whose image is this? And they go, Caesar's. And he goes, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's. And they were shut up. And he's basically like, get the fuck out of here. Because, like, why are you fucking with me? Like, bro, what? And, like, he just had such a cunning way of, like, just cutting through the bullshit of, like, bro, first of all, you're not even asking the right question, okay? Your question is flawed. Let me help you out. God doesn't care about your taxes. God doesn't want your money. God doesn't want your fake devotion. God doesn't want your fake... God doesn't want you to put on a show for the people pretending to be obedient. God doesn't want that. God wants your heart. God wants something that cannot be faked. Give to God what is God's. There's this scene in Wicked, for Good, Wicked Part 2. And in Part 1, at the end, Elphaba was basically chased out of town because they portrayed her as the Wicked Witch, because they wanted her to shun and basically, I don't know, just throw under the bus the underdog that were the animals. And she was like, these are my friends. Like, I'm not going to do that to them. And she had the power. She was actually the one who was bestowed this actual power. And it was like they were in witch school and stuff, and nobody had power like she did. But she was bestowed this power because, I believe, because she had a pure heart. She had integrity. Even in the face of that pressure, even at the threat of her own life and well-being. But she wouldn't succumb to that pressure and to what they wanted her to do, even though they offered her the world. And so she was outcast because she was hunted. They wanted her dead. And in Part 2, her and Glinda, like, they get together, and then they figure out that the wizard is actually the one behind all the evil doing. And then Elphaba goes to the wizard's place and she confronts him. And she's like, we're going to tell the people. We're going to tell the people who you are and what you've done. And he's like, and they were trying to like paint Glinda as the good witch and her as the bad witch because and she's like, and we're going to tell them the truth, and we're going to tell them that Elphaba is actually good. And he's like, you can tell them whatever you want, you can tell them all you want, but they're not going to believe you, because they want to believe what they believe. They want to believe that I'm good. They want to believe that Glinda's good. And after I watched it, that just kind of stuck with me for a few days. And because when I saw the first movie, I couldn't help but see like the same attributes of Jesus in Elphaba. I remember I posted about it and some people were like, oh my God, that's so blasphemous. I'm like, bro, calm down. My literal words were like, if Jesus was a character in Wicked, he would be Elphaba. Whatever. It's true. But in the second part, the wizard was like, they're not going to believe you because they want to believe in this more than they want the truth. And it reminded me of religion, but in particular of the Bible. Now, I grew up Catholic, and in my early 20s, I was introduced to non-denominational Christianity, and I started reading the Bible for the first time. And Spirit touched my heart, and the Bible became the living word. It became alive to me. And I had such a beautiful relationship with it. And that hasn't changed, but also I would be remiss if I didn't say the whole truth of like, not all of it resonated as true. And I really feel like there was a real reason why Jesus spoke in parables, and he was like, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. Because I feel like Yeshua knew that this book is going to be distributed, put together and distributed by the hands of man. And Spirit is in it, but also it is full of half-truths in some areas. And I feel like a half-truth is way more dangerous than just a full-out blunt lie of bullshit. And it's like, how did the how did the book come to be? You know, Constantinople, however you say his name, all these things, all these people, what motives and agenda did they have that they gave us this information? And how did it benefit them to put the information that they put in there? And in what ways were they keeping us from our own realization of our own empowerment and sovereignty and liberation by leaving out the things that they left out, like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, like things like the Dead Sea Scrolls or the Gnostic, all these things, right? I don't know. I just feel like there's always an invitation to not just truth, but to connect directly. To connect directly. I feel like God speaks through his creation, through the universe all day long. All day long. If you're listening. Whoever will listen will hear the speaking heavens. That's A.W. Tozer, which is kind of ironic because he was a devout, I don't know if he was fundamentalist, but he was very much devout to the Bible and God. His was very relational, but he was very literally by the book. And I think it was really beautiful. I think his work and his writings were really beautiful. I especially love Knowledge of the Holy and God's Pursuit of Man. I think Man's Pursuit of God was the first one, and then God's Pursuit of Man was the prequel, because he's like, that has to come first. And in, I think it was chapter 2 of Knowledge of the Holy, maybe it was the intro, he was like, the most important thing about any person is what they in their heart of hearts believe God to be. And I couldn't agree with that more. But also, I think it would be preferable for us to hold loosely to a book in comparison to letting God hold us in our hearts and speak for himself to us. And even if we have to, because if this book, if this religion, if this name is standing in between, is standing as an obstacle in between you and that connection, that heart space, that's where the source, the beginning of you coming fully alive is, I feel like God would be like, fuck it, let it go. Let it go and be here with me. Be here in this presence, in this communion. But we've been told that our hearts are depraved from the moment they're created, but also we're created in the image of God. It's like, what? We're told that we don't deserve love, and that in and of itself can be fatal. Because if you don't believe you deserve something, how the fuck are you supposed to receive it? That literally almost sent me off the edge. We're told that we're supposed to absorb everyone else's bullshit because we have the Spirit of God living in us. No, we're not. We're supposed to love ourselves. The commandment was love your Lord God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. When they said, Jesus, what's the most important commandment? He said, that's the first one. And the second one is like it. The second one is love your neighbor as yourself. And so there's a clear implication there that in order for you to love your neighbor, you have to love yourself first. So no, I'm not going to sacrifice my own well-being and myself in order to show up for you. Jesus had very clear boundaries and prioritized his solitude, his well-being, his capacity. Like, it's a very clear picture. And yet the way religion portrays it, it's like you have to martyr yourself. And it really perpetuates the script, especially with women, of acting as codependent people on other people, and self-sacrificial. And it's like, you can love, but you can't give what you don't have. And I think it's a very dangerous teaching of the church to people. And I think it perpetuates that cycle of things like codependency, of things like martyrdom, of things like that. Sounds innocent enough. It's not a big deal, but actually it's a slow death for people. And that's not why we were created. We were created because God's glory is our hearts fully alive. Fully alive. Our hearts are actually good. I can see people and how they were created to be, and our hearts are good innately. But we have so much shit and trauma and baggage and pressure and shoulds and ideals and theology placed onto us, and we feel so inadequate, like we're just not making the mark because we're pursuing the wrong thing. We're pursuing legalism. We're pursuing a checklist. We're pursuing trying to build ourselves up in this world when it's like, it comes from here. And you have to be filled in here. And your heart has to come alive in here. And as a result of that overflow, there's a light that exudes out of you. There's a joy. The joy of the Lord is my strength. For the longest time, I didn't understand what that meant. I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And now, like in my life, in practice, I realize, oh, joy is a strength. Joy itself is a huge strength. And joy doesn't mean happiness necessarily. It doesn't mean I'm all bubbly. Joy is a state of being. It's an alignment. As Tosh says, it's a byproduct of mind-heart coherence. Joy is the effect of, for example, for me, that heart space and worship with God. Because in that moment, I'm at the highest place I could ever be. Nothing, literally nothing matters. Everything melts off of me. I'm just one. And I think that type of connection and beautiful experience should not be exclusive to religious tradition and religious theology. I think everyone's heart was created in some way to connect with your Creator. I long for that. And I feel like there's other people who long for that, but there's no avenue for that of like how I'm not going to go. Most people are like, I'm not going to go listen to a Christian song. I'm not Christian. That doesn't make sense. So yeah, that's what I want to do. A few, probably like in 2020, like 5 or 6 years ago now, around that time, I was sitting with God a lot actually, and I would come to the park. This is one of them. And I would sit under a tree and I would record lives on IG, and I called them Pray, Sing, Belong. And I would start with like worship song singing, and I would pray for the collective, for humanity, for the world, for protection from COVID and all these things. And I would give a message, whatever was on my heart. And I would like create this paper, and then, oh, hummingbird. And I would deliver the message. And it was a really beautiful time. And I didn't have an audience, but it was like my offering to the world. And shit was just going crazy in the world. I was like, this is what I have. This is what I have to offer. I want to do something. And everything was going on with all the police brutality and killing black men and black women. And it was just such a dark and heavy time. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help. This is all I have. And it's like, it hasn't ended. Like, people are still being massacred by those that were supposed to hold as authority and helpers. It's crazy. It was in that season that I heard God tell me, I am creating something new in you. And usually when I hear something like that, whatever it is, I'm like, okay, cool. Because usually it's slow moving. Usually I don't know what it is, and I'm not supposed to know what it is. But it's a word that I'm given, and I hold on to it. And then later on, I'm like, oh, that's what you were talking about. And, for a moment, I was like, oh, that's cool. Thank you. I have no idea what you're talking about, but thank you. I don't know. This feels like the new thing, We'll see.